Hey, thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Great honor to be here at D.I.C.E. and representing our happy band of creators back in the UK at Media Molecule. I'm lead creator on Tearaway, lead Tearaway, if you will. And just waiting for my slides to appear on this monitor. I think we can go. And oh, there we go. So I'm going to be talking about using the ordinary, but using the ordinary to create the extraordinary. Or to put it another way, how having a sort of childlike inquisitiveness about our world can really help in leading us to create more fantastical fantasy worlds, which is something that I think has really run through all of our games at Media Molecule. Obviously, like LittleBigPlanet 1 and 2 in the past, and now Tearaway. And I think there's some, although this will be like very flavored to how we make games at Molecule, I think there might be some interesting principles behind all the kind of wonky graphics and doodles. So we all enjoy making and creating fantasies. As games makers, we have that desire to surprise and delight an audience and show that audience new worlds and give them experiences that they haven't had before. And the best dreams, I think, are really based in reality, but it's a reality that gets flipped on its head and turned inside out. I mean, we all know that dinosaurs existed. We all know that castles existed. You know, maybe they didn't all come together at the same time and fight in a little cardboard castle, but, you know, it's kind of, it gives us a way in. And having that realism at the core makes the rest of it all feel a lot more engaging. So the stories that really inspired me as a child and continue to do so are the ones that base a fantasy on a fact, like a realistic starting point. And they were the ones that I felt myself that I could add to and like create my own like fan art and like expand the story out and start kind of adding to it and creating new characters and just taking the imaginary back into the real world again, making it more real. A kind of obvious example is Where the Wild Things Are. A real favorite of mine. Starts off in a very realistic setting. Max is sent to his room as a punishment, but he kind of transcends and escapes that by transforming it into a world of monsters that he can rule over and go partying with, and just generally have a really great fantasy for any kid to read who really likes acting up a bit. And also Labyrinth, absolute classic. Hopefully everyone's seen that one. Again, starting in another bedroom. This one belonging to the main character, Sarah. This one's kind of more like a creative sanctuary than some kind of prison, and it's filled with all her own her personality and her creativity. And each decorative element that you can see in the room are things that then form the story afterwards. So, for instance, like the MC Escher drawing in the corner then becomes the actual landscape that she's kind of trapped in and exploring. And all of those, everywhere that she goes and all the characters that she meets on the adventure all come from the pictures and the stuffed toys that are scattered around on her bedroom floor. It's kind of a surreal adventure just made out of her everyday possessions. It's all really personalized to her. Another one I love, Time Bandits. You see again another bedroom wall. And it really sets the tone and the parameters for the adventure that follows. That's kind of, you could say that kid, that's kind of basically me. But you know, that wall could be a wall in any development studio, really. All of us creating worlds and pinning them up on the wall and fleshing it all out. And when the fourth wall gets torn off, then everything gets heightened. The real becomes the surreal. And those are just some small examples of books and films that do that kind of thing. But to try and do this in a game we can't really cast an actor to play the gamer. It's got to be the gamer themselves. And in order to do that, we really need to know like a little bit more about who they are and what they're doing. So here's Lifestyle Guy, and he's having a good time. So what can we really say about our audience? You know, what kind of reality or fact can we base it off? What's the equivalent of the children's bedroom that is the kind of mundane setting that we can then expand and make a fantasy out of? Well, there's one thing that we know about our audience while they're playing a video game, and that's they're going to be playing a video game. I mean, you know, I could drop the mic now. That's kind of, you know, pretty amazing fact I've put up there. But it really helps us to like just think, yeah, you are holding a console, you know, that you exist, and starting to like play with like how would that inform and change some of our decisions on the game. So as we started making Tearaway, we knew it would be a handheld game. So we knew a few more obvious things. We knew that they'd be holding it with their hands. That pause was a bit more dramatic than I thought. And also they would be looking at it with their face, probably. And they'd have a load of items around them. They're sort of real-world loot. They'd have, you know, things like maybe just the things that make their personality, or like decisions that they've made if they've like been curating objects in their house, like maybe just their sofa or their family photos or their favorite cup. You know, all kinds of stuff is all around us at any time that's kind of personal to us. So maybe we could make some kind of story out of these objects to like really draw the player into the fantasy, so that it's basically the narrative ends up being based on them. But we really needed like a core thing that would just pull all this together, something that was very realistic at the core of this fantasy world. And it took us a little while to work out what that was. And we kind of followed the same principle of we just needed to look what's in front of us. And what's in front of me was all of this. That's my desk. You can't see the desk, but it is there, apparently, I've heard. And covered in Post-it notes and doodles and concept art. And Media Molecule is a very messy place. And as we were like trying to find the art style, we were just ending up with like reams and reams of concept art, and it was all piling up, and it started to form all these landscapes on our desks. And what was the physical form of them seemed more interesting than actually the artwork that was printed on them. So paper became the main element that we decided to build the game world out of. It would just make the fantasy world more believable, because it wouldn't just look different and feel different. It would still remain very approachable. Everyone kind of knows what paper is. So because it was realistically constructed, we could go kind of a bit more out there with the actual content that we would then build from it. So your average piece of paper is pretty dull. This is some concept art I did of some paper. I'm surprised it's not in the Into the Pixel exhibit, but I'll get over that. And just like any material that allows for personal expression, it's just waiting to be transformed. Unfortunately, for your humble piece of paper, it usually gets transformed by just having some emails printed out on it. So we created this concept video in the art department to really start showing how versatile paper was and really help us like think about this material. And that really inspired our engine creator Mark and our technical artist Stefan, and gradually the rest of the team as well, to really make it happen inside the game. I'll just start that one. So you can, oh, you can see all kinds of ways that you can interact and touch and fold and transform the world. Feature of cutscenes. So, is that going to stop? Yeah. So we've all got a history with paper. We all handle it every day. We don't necessarily think about what it can actually be used for. And it's only when we see a pop-up book or a paper craft model that we remember that the substance can be so much more than just paperwork. Tactile, fragile, full of movement, and very easy to transform. And they're all interesting elements that, not just for the artists, but for game makers in general. We're surrounded by this stuff all the time, and it's just waiting for this transformation to happen. And it just needs us as games makers and some digital magic to make it all kind of change and transform in front of your eyes and in your hands. And I'm really hoping that this kind of this could continue. That there could be a continued like a renaissance of people using in-game crafting with the simulation of materials to give the player a lot more to explore and feel engaged with. So we took this material from the player's world to build our world, and the world is traversed by a traditional game character. But our goal was, as we set out, was to involve the gamer more directly. So how could we push it further and give the gamer like their own true identity within its world? Well, luckily for us, we had the PS Vita with all its sensors and cameras. It felt like it was kind of like a magical recording box of just, anywhere you go near it, it could get some kind of input from you, whether that's from the cameras or from the touch screens. And so we really wanted to just expand out and just think about all the ways that we could kind of interact with this world. This is a promo shot of how the Vita can be interacted with, but this is what I wanted to do with it. What I wanted to do with it was to go forward, not backwards. There. I wanted to be able to push my fingers up through the world to see them like waving back at me. It was something that could only be done with that hardware, and it straight away like set up this expectation of a world that you could literally tear a hole through the fourth wall. And so the second element that we used to get the player more directly involved in the fantasy was the player themselves, and more specifically their hands and their faces. The things that, as we discussed earlier, the things that they're holding the Vita with and looking at the Vita. And just seeing how the world would react to this kind of terrifying intrusion of these giant fleshy things like poking in and peering in. And it kind of just makes you, it was kind of intriguing just looking at how it makes you look at made us all look at our hands differently. You don't really look at your fingers very often, but it made us really examine like anew these things that we have, and seeing them going into this other world made them look both alien but also very like reassuring as well. And following on from that, the game's character, the messenger, they needed a visual goal. They needed somewhere to head to. Somewhere that they didn't need a mini-map to kind of highlight it. It needed to be very, very, very visual, very easy to read. Well, a lot of folk tales start with the basis of the sun. We were thinking about, well, what would happen if the sun was there, but the sun was broken, and peering in through the hole in the sun is terrifyingly you. And that really unlocked quite a lot for us of thinking about the way that the player was then actually like visualized in the narrative, and we could make it then a story about the way that the player and the character are trying to be reunited. There they are in the sun. And that really elevated the importance of the player in the story. And it had a really nice side effect in that like players would start to act up while they were playing. They'd instead of like watching the cutscene and like jabbing the skip button to get through it, they'd start playing along and like pulling expressions. And I don't think anyone would win an Oscar for like their facial contortions, but it just meant that they were more actively engaged in what was happening inside of the game. And you know, it meant that we kind of got this main character for free as well. It just kind of appeared. And we didn't need like 50 customization sliders for the player to fiddle with to make something that looked like themselves, because it looked like themselves, because it was themselves. And that became a really important thing to us, this feeling of like instant like customization. You know, we learned from LittleBigPlanet what amazing things that some people can make, but it is kind of quite a small group that make these ridiculously impressive things. And for Tearaway, because we were focusing more on an adventure, we wanted to make sure everyone would be involved and wouldn't be like having to go out of the game in order to make something. So we were thinking about it a little more like Instagram or something like that, where everyone can create and contribute. But it just takes seconds, you know. It's just the click of a button to take a photo. You see here how this elk has no skin. Luckily, this person lives in a house with something spotty, and they instantly make the elk a lot happier. You know, it's not particularly deep, but it's just very instant and really you know, adds and changes the world in little ways that just keep permeating through. For many, choosing costumes in LittleBigPlanet was the way that they got into the creativity without really delving into like full-on level creation. So one of our engineers on the Tearaway team, Nathan, he really wanted to give the player the ability to cut sheets of paper. So it wasn't so much like we could have a customization system that was more about, well, less about like dressing up and more about actually like crafting and creating the clothes or the elements. You see here, this squirrel is very demanding, wanting to become regal, so you make a little crown and stick it on. And here's some I grabbed off our website where users are sharing their crowns, and you can see how you know, they're not particularly complex. Most of them are fairly similar, but each one is personal in some way to the person that made them. You know, we chose to make it a crown because everyone can kind of describe a crown shape very simply. And maybe some people would want to like go deeper and stick loads of jewels and gems and all kinds of other stuff on. But ultimately, everyone just gets a kick out of it because they get to stick it on a cute little character that's been professionally animated, and it's like, I've made a squirrel. You know, it's kind of that instant gratification, really. So the last point I'd like to make is this feeling of how we can bring games out of games to really get that intersection between a game world and a real world, so that players wouldn't just do creative things in the game, but they'd want to then like bring out those skills back into reality again, and just get it a bit closer to the kind of bedroom walls that I was talking about at the beginning. So obviously 3D printers are going to be huge, desktop digital foundries. They can really offer ways of like extracting the raw data from a game and making it a physical object, which I think there's lots of exciting possibilities to making games become, like digital things become more tangible. But for Tearaway, we went a little more old school. Instead of 3D printers, we co-opted the neglected 2D printer. You know, it kind of sits around being all beige and unloved. You know, it doesn't normally have a nice place in the office, and it certainly doesn't get to play any video games. So we kind of wanted to, you know, give it some fun. So we designed our rewards mechanism so that all of the trophies, all the things that you collect in the game, you can print them out, bring them to the real world, so that it just makes them real rather than a fantasy. I mean, we co-opted printers to make that possible, but I think there's other pieces of hardware out there that we could already exist. These are just some stupid examples, but you know, having characters from a game actually phone you up and tell you some secrets or something, or you know, linking up your dungeon crawler with a fitness band, or this one's quite mad, having lava levels which automatically turn up your heating in your home if you've got a thermostat, making it uncomfortable for everyone. This is my favorite piece of hardware ever, which I just think is incredible. You know, just imagine that you're playing Zelda. You get a new piece of armor, and you know it kind of gets knitted for you. I mean, that would just be the best. So you know, those are just some silly bonus ideas, but I think there's loads of potential with the growth of the Internet of Things and all the connected devices that we have, to just let a bit more of our game worlds to like seep out into the real world, and just let all of these devices all talk and have fun with each other. So those are a few examples of how we try to merge the player's world with the world that they're playing with, to make something a little more interesting out of the mundane. You know, we use paper, but I think there's many other materials that, you know, are just as interesting creatively. Wool, paper, clay, paint, all kinds of stuff. And I'm sure players would be delighted to explore more of this sort of stuff than just playing another like slippy, slidey Iceland, or you know, those are kind of interesting experiences in the past. But I think we've got the power to like just simulate a lot more now. Oh, gone back. Sorry. There we go. The player themselves, making them like a key member of the cast. You know, all consoles and devices all have a camera available, and they can be used, you know, not just to control gameplay badly, but to actually add instant personalization and humor, and using the ignored colored printer, bringing the game out of the game into the physical space. You know, that could go a lot further. You know, it would be interesting to just see how many devices that can be hacked to work with our games, and just bring everything together a bit more. So I'm looking forward to the next golden age of gaming, with fantastical games that really connect a little more with our regular lives, and really like weave some fantasies between the two of them. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Nice job. Thanks a lot. Cheers.